morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to Optimus Fantasy Football. Back for another edition of Optimus Monday with me, Nate Polvogt, and my co-host, the one and only Mr. Kevin Tompkins. You can find him on Blue Sky at ktompkinsii.bsky.social. Of course, you can find us at optimusfantasy.bsky.social as well, but we're not here to talk about that, Kevin. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got some undervalued veterans to talk about this morning. But first, I want to remind everyone to go check out our Discord channel. The link is in the show description down there at the bottom. It's a great channel. It's a wonderful channel. It's the best channel, or so I've been told.
It's a wonderful channel.
It's a wonderful channel set up by the one and only Lou Brunson, our guru of social media, folks. We're going to be live covering the NFL draft. You can go over there and sign up for updates. You can get every single pick so you don't have to follow it. You can get team specific picks if you want. It's all going to be there for you. We've also got some stuff up on the site, Kevin. You've got an article up there, some zero RB tiers. We've got a dynasty startup draft strategy article up there right now. We've got more coming all week. We've got new YouTube content coming as well. We've got some draft ready stuff. We've got some sleepers. We've got some NFL draft predictions coming on our YouTube channel and our shorts channels this week. So make sure to check that out. And Kevin, we've got a charity tournament that we might be rolling out here coming up. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, just a little teaser for the crowd here. As some of you do know, I have run a charity best ball tournament the last several seasons. Took a little a break last season, but stuff in the works right now. Bringing that back. Obviously stay tuned for more information in the coming weeks here. But we're picking up we're taking the baton. We're moving it across right now. So very excited to share some more news as that comes. But throw a couple of nuggets out there. You might be muted.
I am definitely muted. We're just sprinkling a little bit of goodies for you guys, just so you know what's coming. Make sure you're looking out for more information about our charity tournament coming up here. Also, guys, the Fantasy Football Expo is also coming up. Check out the show description for some discount codes to tickets for that. It's a great time. You're going to get to meet a lot of the analysts you see here on YouTube, get to talk to us, get to pick our brains about fantasy football all weekend. So make sure that you check that out. Now, I think, Kevin, let's get into some undervalued veterans. What do you think, man?
Let's talk about some of these gray beards, shall we?
Yeah, right. Kind of like our beards here. The first one we're going to start with isn't quite gray beard yet, but it's Chris Godwin over in Tampa Bay, Kevin. Right now in Fantasy Pros draft rankings, he is wide receiver 27. He is going as the best ball wide receiver 31 on Underdog. What do you think about that with Chris Godwin? I mean, this Tampa Bay offense hasn't changed much. You've got Bucky Irving, a year more experienced here in the NFL. But you've got Baker back. Mike Evans is going to be healthy. We don't assume they're going to do anything at wide receiver in the draft. Wide receiver 27 just seems way too low to me.
I mean, let's get into the weeds here with this, because not much has really changed with Chris Godwin from like a team perspective. The only thing that's really changed, and hopefully that will be a holdover from when Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator now in Jacksonville famously, but he went back into the slot last year after being primarily a wide, out wide. 2023, for some reason, they decided to use him out wide more than his typical. He had been in the slot every single year since 2019. Came back with a vengeance, was on pace to shatter a lot of his career bests until he had a season-ending injury. But everything else looked awesome from like a metrics perspective. Was on pace for 2.36 yards per route run, by far the best of his career. Look, the ADOT was shortened up a little bit, and we had seen his ADOT shorten up when he had some of those injuries in 2021, 2022. But it normalized when he went out wide. Maybe he in his later era, he's going to be 29 when the season opens up in week one. I'm not worried about Chris Godwin from a target earning perspective. From a team perspective, the Bucs are going to be passing the ball quite a bit. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Jaylen McMillan, Kate Otten. The offensive pieces are still in play. I'm not worried about Chris Godwin from what's really changed. The offensive coordinator, and that's like one of the few things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in the wide receiver 27 price, that's baked in with some of the injury stuff. The fact he's a little bit older. We've seen guys that are target earners, especially when they start getting into a little bit older. Those prices get baked in. We've seen like guys like Jarvis Landry, that are basically, I would say Godwin's way above Jarvis Landry, but I'm only saying that just because of like the ADOT stuff, and that's like the archetype that maybe he fits a little more into these days. But with the strength of this offense, I can't imagine not drafting Chris Godwin where he's going just almost an auto.
You have to. What I think is interesting is before a really freak injury, the ankle dislocation. How often do you hear about something like that? And a serious ankle dislocation, other than, Dak Prescott. Through 7 games last season, he was wide receiver 2 in PPR.
Right.
We're not talking about 8, 9. Yeah, we're not talking about a guy who was on the downturn last year and then hurt his hamstring. Right.
It's not ligament. It's not a ligament thing.
Exactly.
You can get spooked by a lot of these older wide receivers, especially, what we know about ligament injuries. The younger you are, the more likely you're to bounce back and get back to where you were from a talent perspective. 29, 29 does not feel old, but in football, you're starting to get up against it. And Father Time is not as much on your side as he was when you're 23. As Blink-182 said, nobody likes you when you're 23. We love you when you're 23 in fantasy.
If you're a wide receiver, yes, absolutely.
100%.
Well, what I'll say to that, he's only had 4 seasons north of 100 targets. Some of those are because of injury. Some of those are because of the offense he was in, and he was stuck behind guys like Mike Evans. He probably has a little bit more tread left on his tires than a normal 29-year-old wide receiver. There's probably a little bit more there. Plus, look at the offense he's in. He's got Mike Evans, so he's not going to be the focal point of any defense. And I always love this situation. I love it for T. Higgins, too. It's why I'm so high on T. Higgins. And I think everybody should be high on T. Higgins. You pair him with a guy like Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, whatever. Defenses can't hyper-focus on you. Then you can be targeted more, and it's less work, if that makes sense, because you're not fighting double coverage all of the time. You're fighting single coverage or zone coverage. So you're either finding a soft spot or you're beating one guy off of the line.
Right.
I don't think he's like a top 5 guy this year. I think there's a chance he's a top 10 wide receiver this year, though, in PPR. I don't see why not.
Yeah, like he's for sure a single week spike week guy. If you're playing best ball, like Chris Godwin will, we talk about wide receivers that if you're in week 16, week 17, the playoff weeks, who are the guys that can go off? Chris Godwin is absolutely one of those guys. Is he going to have a top, 3 wide receiver pace like he had last year? Probably not, but that shows you can string a few weeks together and almost anybody can do that. But Chris Godwin can be, he's been in offenses with, other guys, obviously Rob Gronkowski, Adam Humphries, who's taken targets, over the years, Deshaun Jackson, obviously the Jameis Winston, he was part of that with like Brashad Perriman and guys like that who, believe it or not, once upon a time, Brashad Perriman had over 100 targets in this offense.
It's true.
So he's played alongside some people who have taken targets, but the constant has always been Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So I'm not worried about Godwin from like a target earning perspective, not worried about a T perspective. Those are like the 2 things that I look at when, you look at, guys that maybe they're starting to creep up on 30 years old, and when can you start projecting the drop off? I don't think we've seen that at all from Godwin. The ADOT probably makes it a little bit easier for him to accrue targets because we know Mike Evans is, has been a steady kind of deep threat and intermediate guy for so long. Maybe the worry for Godwin isn't Godwin himself, but like just Father Time he's going to come for Mike Evans at some point. I'm not saying it's this year because he's been amazingly consistent. We know the track record, but at some point, maybe it's not all the way, but like we're going to see maybe a nut or a bolt fly off, and then as we know with receivers, once that happens, it's usually pretty sudden.
Yep. Well, Julio Jones is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Great to a complete and total fall off. I've been comparing Mike Evans to Julio Jones for a while because I think that's what we're going to see. I think it's going to be a very Julio Jones, just like fall off a cliff from relevancy to complete irrelevancy within a season almost, where we maybe don't see it coming. Could it be this year? I mean,
it could be, but we're not prognosticating that by any means.
No, God, no, offense, not even.
Yeah, I think the offense is still plenty strong enough to, even if Mike Evans does fall off a little bit, and that probably will benefit Godwin to an extent that will certainly benefit Jalen McMillan. So I don't think the offense, like the strength of it, from, who they have in their personnel, I don't think that falls off by any measure. So like wide receiver 27 for somebody like that in a great offense who has a history of target earning, who has a history of consistency when he is on the field and being efficient. Like that's one of the best prices you'll find for any wide receiver.
I can't disagree. Let's move on to another wide receiver, though, Kevin. This one is over in Miami. We've got Jaylen Waddle, currently wide receiver 31 in the Fantasy Pros draft rankings. He is wide receiver 33 at ADP on Underdog. This is an interesting one. A lot of it is predicated on what happens with Tyreek Hill, because we've heard he's possibly unhappy. He might want to move somewhere else. I don't really see that happening, but Waddle, wide receiver 31, is crazy.
Yeah, like I've been Waddle pilled for pretty much his entire career. Like, and we talk about, because you alluded to it before about the wide receiver 2s are some of the best values that you can get with the Chris Godwins, the T. Higgins, the Devonta Smiths, the Jaylen Waddles, where they're guys that are behind another productive, the draft community is saying they're not as good as the wide receiver 1 ahead of them. But, as we've seen, Jaylen Waddle can be a wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith can be a wide receiver 1. T. Higgins has, shown that even with Jamar Chase, he can outproduce him in multiple week stretches. And that is no different for Jaylen Waddle. He's been amazingly efficient his entire career. And anytime that Jaylen Waddle has struggled for fantasy, it hasn't been because of Waddle's talent. It's been because of outside factors, whether it's Tua getting hurt. Obviously Tyreek Hill had a wrist injury last season. That really hampered things, plus some of the quarterback issues. Like last season, we saw a big shift in this offense out of necessity because of their offensive line issues and because of some of the quarterback issues. They had to shorten up the ADOT of the entire offense and basically make the offense run on Geno Smith and Devon Achane. Like you can't survive doing that. And that's great. It was great for Geno Smith for fantasy, but the 2 players that hurt were the classic duo of Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. So Jaylen Waddle had come into 2024 with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, over 100 targets, didn't meet any of those benchmarks last season, but he's still amazingly efficient. The last 2 years before last year, 2.59, 2.63 yards per route run. Still very healthy in terms of his age. He's 27 years old. I am still fine with Jaylen Waddle. I'm still, buying for dynasty. I'm still in for redraft. I'm in for best ball because Tyreek Hill, we talk about now there's like the Antonio Brown risk with Tyreek Hill where something can happen and he is out of the league. And look, we saw that, last weekend with Tyreek Hill, legal issues, who now we're incredibly live for something else to happen on that front. We know, Tyreek Hill has not been a saint, not a New Orleans saint, not a saint in the view of public opinion. Yeah. Legal or otherwise. So, that brings great, for Jaylen Waddle. If he's the number 1 option in this passing offense. We know that he can, he did it without Tyreek Hill in 2021. He had 138 targets, 104 catches. Like, we've seen a sample size of Jaylen Waddle without Tyreek Hill in this offense. And granted, that was 3 seasons ago, but we have it. And that was his only 100 reception season. It was more Jarvis Landry than anything. He had a 7-yard ADOT in that season. But look, Jaylen Waddle is plenty talented, still efficient. If he is the number one guy, if it's him and Jonnu Smith, like, we're looking at 140 targets. We're looking at 90 to 100 catches. We're looking at a top 15 fantasy wide receiver, and you don't have to draft it at that price anymore. We've had to draft him in the second round. We'd have to draft him at the 2-3 turn. And now we don't have to do that. And we're still getting massive upside based on the price we get to draft him at. So, like, I don't understand why, some of the Miami stink from last year is like seeped into the 2025 ADP. I don't quite get it, but if we can get that price for him, like, I'm all over it.
Well, and I do understand there's some risk baked in to Jaylen Waddle, like we've talked about, and he could get hurt. He hasn't played a full season since 2022.
Anybody can get hurt. That's the thing.
Anybody can get hurt, and that is the thing. But what worries me more is his quarterback, because if Tua goes down, this offense, it just grinds to a halt.
What, Zach Wilson doesn't do it for you?
No. Does he do it for you?
No.
He doesn't think so.
Look, I mean, for all of Zach Wilson's warts, he still supported Garrett Wilson last year.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah,
I'm like,
dude,
2 years ago.
Aaron Rodgers supported Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams last year. And that was less about quarterback play and more about the wide receivers. We got this question here in the chat from Lou Brunson. How worried are you that the league has figured out Mike McDaniel's offense, R.E. Waddle? It's been a long time since 2021. Is that a concern for you at all?
And everybody, has tape on every offense. I think certainly Mike McDaniel's one of the best minds in football. I'm not discounting that wholly, but I think it can be a concern if we start seeing if we start seeing what we saw last year. I think the concerns will just, get even louder and louder. But I do think a lot of that was because of quarterback issues, because the offensive line was not great. And then some injuries, obviously we saw Tyreek Hill with his wrist injury. We've seen, some of the other offensive pieces get hurt, Raheem Mostert, Odell Beckham, they wanted to, try to make a thing in 2024, and that clearly didn't happen. So I do think it's a confluence of factors, but I'm not going to just solely put that on a coach not being able to scheme, because we have a history of seeing when this offense is healthy, like, there's no better schemer of offensive talent outside of Sean McVay than I think Mike McDaniel, certainly at the top of that list of guys that can be like that second best schemer.
Well, you're 100% right. When this offense is healthy, Mike McDaniel can scheme the hell out of it. It's just they haven't had a healthy offense since 2021. I mean, between the Tua concussions, Tyreek Hill getting hurt on and off, like, they just haven't been healthy. Let's move on, though. I want to move on to a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence over in Jacksonville, currently QB 20 in Fantasy Pros draft rankings. He is going as the QB 19 right now in best ball on Underdog. Kevin, I brought this one to the table, and I'll be honest, I haven't been the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan over his career. I thought he was overrated coming out of college at Clemson. Then after his first season with Urban Meyer, kind of gave him a pass. I just haven't seen enough out of him to love him, but given the coaching that they've had in Jacksonville and Doug Peterson, like, what a mess that offense turned into and that team turned into with behind Peterson. They got a little bit better when Peterson was gone. I think Trevor Lawrence takes a step. They've got Liam Cohen now, who we just talked about, is the architect of the pass-heavy offense in Tampa Bay. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't go to that again. You talked about one of your RB tiers, your 0 RB tiers in your article, Etienne and Bigsby in Jacksonville. It's not a running back duo that instills a lot of fear in defenses, right? I think this becomes a more pass-heavy offense. Brian Thomas Jr., Kid's a stud. I think that he needs to be north of 140 targets in this offense, and I think that benefits Trevor Lawrence. QB 20, I think, is low. I think he's a QB 1 this season. I think he figures into probably QB 8 to 12, in my estimation, is where I figure he's going to end up. I'm taking him at this discount right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair, assessment. We know Liam Cohen last year with the Bucs, top 10 team in pass rate over expected. Jaguars last year were bottom 10. They're just outside the bottom 10. Yep. So you could probably expect some of the passing in, better situations there. Trevor Lawrence of quarterbacks with 250 dropbacks, second highest ADOT behind, I believe, is Anthony Richardson. The pieces there, obviously Brian Thomas is fantastic. But outside of that, obviously they cut Evan Engram. So they're looking at Brenton Strange, who right. I think he's one of the better values there, and that he's going to have to survive the draft because of that, because there's always the possibility they could draft the tight end and muddy that up. But yeah, Brian Thomas, they paid De'Ami Brown $10 million for a season to see if he has anything left from Washington. The wide receiver, it would not shock me if they brought in multiple wide receivers here in the draft, because right now we're staring down the barrel of Gabe Davis as the week 1 starter. And, as great as that feels, this ain't 2022 anymore where we can try to prognosticate Gabe Davis season. Remember those wars, the Gabe Davis
wars?
Oh
my God, they were awful. Yeah. I think we talked about this on Friday a little bit.
We did, but we're gonna mention it all the time,
dude. Well, the one game Gabe Davis, the one that cracked me up was 120 yards and 4 touchdown playoff game.
The one against the Chiefs, yeah.
Yeah, and then the next season, he's getting drafted at wide receiver 13.
Hey, he caught a touchdown the first game. It was Gabe Davis season was ready for takeoff.
Yeah, did he catch another one though?
One more, I think.
Yes, and that is the tale of Gabe Davis. I don't know, man. I agree with you. I mean, Parker Washington right now is their wide receiver 3. That doesn't make me super excited, but also at the same time, I do like Brenton Strange. I think they're going to do something at wide receiver in the draft, and the talent of Brian Thomas could make these other receivers better. Maybe it makes Gabe Davis a little bit more serviceable. I'm not saying to go draft him. I'm just saying in an NFL perspective, he's still a wide receiver 4 at best.
Yeah, this feels a lot actually like the DeAndre Hopkins Texans teams in terms of target hierarchy, where it's going to be Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas is probably going to have 160, 170 targets just out of necessity if they don't bring in somebody. And then it's going to be, if I have to look at this team and try to figure out who's going to be the next team player in targets who leads, it's going to be like Parker Washington, just out of the slot, just because it almost has to be. And then Brenton Strange. But yeah, it's going to be Brian Thomas at the top, number 1 with a bullet. And he's going to get absolutely fed by Trevor Lawrence, and it's going to be deep as well. Gabe Davis is probably going to do his best Mac Hollins impression of catching touchdowns that we all complain about on Twitter. But I still think this offense can be above average. I think that's a good benchmark for the season. And I think Trevor Lawrence, we've all been waiting for Trevor Lawrence for how long now? It feels like forever, but if he doesn't do it this year, with Liam Cohen, or this year, next year, we're going to be, what is Trevor Lawrence at that point? He's Derek Carr, with a better arm.
That's the perfect analogy. He is. If he doesn't improve the next 2 seasons under a Cohen offense, he's Derek Carr.
Yeah. And that's fine, I suppose. If you can support your top target, great. Just somebody that can support, as long as it's not like Zach Wilson or like Tyrod Taylor or one of these, backup quarterbacks. At least it's Trevor Lawrence, somebody that's going to have some security, to feed Brian Thomas 160, 170 targets before he ends up leaving in free agency or whatnot, or gets traded or whatnot. But give me Brian Thomas of the moon. I will say that. Give me that ahead of
Top
Puka.
five
I
wide
don't know if
receiver
I
this
can say
year.
ahead of Puka, but like
You
he's right
can.
there with Puka. You can. I don't
He is
feel
right there
great
with
about
Puka,
it.
though. No, I'm with you, though. I agree. We got this fun comment here from Lou. He is a big-time Bills fan. If you think it was bad nationally, I cannot overemphasize how much worse the discourse was among Bills fan circles. Ari, Gabe Davis, I still have PTSD from it. I believe that. Then we got this one from Jamie Parag tuning in. What is up, friendo? He says, I sold Parker Washington for Jaylen Warren yesterday.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's
That's
a
not bad at
pretty good
all.
return. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll take it. We're going to stay on the quarterback train, folks. We're going to go over to, this is my guy. Look, I am on the Matthew Stafford train this season. I will be drafting a ton of him. He's QB 22 in the Fantasy Pros draft rankings, QB 23 on Underdog. I get it. He's an older quarterback. He didn't look phenomenal at the beginning of last season, right? Yeah, well, he didn't have his wide receivers either. When he got Puka and Cup back, he was QB 12 from week 8 on. He's now got Devontae Adams and Puka. Blake Corum is a year smarter. Hopefully he's a little bit more involved in the offense behind Kyron Williams. It doesn't really matter who you put in at tight end in a McVay offense. They're going to get a nominal amount of targets. I think he could be a QB1 this year. Stafford's a gunslinger, man. And you know what they're going to do. They're just going to throw the ball a ton. And as long as Adams and Nakua stay healthy, I don't see why he couldn't be a QB1.
You know what's crazy about Matthew Stafford? Prior to the Super Bowl, so the Super Bowl season of 2021, that's the only time that he's had 30 plus touchdowns since 2015. Like that seems wild for Matthew Stafford.
It does.
But touchdown equity for like an offense, it's never something that you can pinpoint. Like we're trying to find the exact moment. It's like the Ralph Wiggum thing from The Simpsons when he gets the Valentine from Lisa. You're trying to hit the pause button. You can see the point where his heart breaks. That's what we're trying to do with Kyron Williams. We're trying to find the moment where Kyron Williams finally falls off the wagon, and then we can just fully invest in this passing offense. That's the only reason I can think of why Matthew Stafford's ADP is so low. Like, and I get that he's older. He feels Phillip Rivers-y,
Kind of.
I mean, he's like, he's the stereotypical, we say it all the time. We've said it multiple times on this show today, graybeard. Like he's the prototypical graybeard that, is still productive in a good offense. We know the offense is going to be condensed with Adams and Puka Nacua, but we need to have some of the touchdown equity there, for us to like really buy in. And if I knew that was going to be the case, Matthew Stafford, I think, would be probably around like QB 15, 14, with like the CJ Strouds and Caleb Williams and Drake Mays of those guys. Like, I'm still fine with him as like a second quarterback at best ball that I know is going to be out there, that I know is going to be starting. And Lou is right. Stafford feels that like that obligatory, we'd rather bail a year too early than a year too late QB right now. But as it stands right now, like he's tied with one of the best offenses in the NFL. And the only detraction might be Stafford himself, but I still think he has plenty of value where if you're in a redraft, he's probably a borderline starter, but probably one of the best streamers, and you're not going to be able to pick him up on the waiver wire to like swap him out. He's always going to be rostered by somebody.
Yep.
But, for Dynasty, like go get him, trade like a third round pick or rookie pick for him, and, have some security if you have two other starters. Like he feels perfectly fine there, but like, I don't know. I just don't know about, because of the yardage and the counting stats. Like, I'm not feeling super great about Stafford, but I get the play because the upside of the offense and how the offense is constructed props him up.
Well, here's kind of where I'm at with it too. He doesn't even necessarily have to be great or even all that good to be a top 15 quarterback in this offense because he throws the ball at least 500 times every season, barring injury. He's dipped under 500 twice in his career. didn't play full seasons, 8 games and 9 games. You know the volume's going to be there, especially in this McVay offense. On volume alone, and what we see Stafford do with 2 talented receivers, I just think he's a top 15. And I get where you're coming from with this in the touchdown equity. Sure, he only had 20 touchdowns last season. But how much of that was due to the fact that he didn't have Nacua and he didn't have Cooper Kupp at full strength for half of the season? So he's thrown to guys like Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson trying to score touchdowns when it's just easier to give the ball to Kyron because you're not getting those chunk plays with guys like Nacua and Kupp.
Yeah, and it's fair also, when you're looking at a guy like Stafford, and you look at all these quarterbacks who don't run. Like Stafford is never going to run. So, we know a lot of the fantasy value is tied toward some production on the ground. And we look at a guy like Joe Burrow where, he's not going to run that much, neither is like Mahomes, but they're like situationally good, and that props him up a bit more. Like Stafford is never going to run for even 50 yards. So you have to be a 4,030 guy to even like get in the door. And that's where I have trouble with, because the offense, if the offense were quarterbacked by somebody a little bit younger, like if this offense were quarterbacked by Trevor Lawrence, we'd be drafting in the top 10.
Yeah, of course. Well, but the rushing upside's there for Lawrence. And just he rushed for 65 yards in 23. All right? Just to be clear.
Okay.
21 attempts, 3.1 yards per carry that season, but not as high as he had 3.86 yards per carry in 20.
195 feet. Great.
Woohoo. Yeah. Hey, it's more than I ran last year.
He just ran 1/3 of a school zone. Cool.
Well, all right. Well, we're going to move on from Matthew Stafford here. I like this one. This is one you brought to the table, Kevin. Jakobi Meyers over in Las Vegas. He's currently going with wide receiver 40 on the Fantasy Pros draft rankings, wide receiver 41 on Underdog. I understand it. I do get it, because what has been exciting about Las Vegas, right? Nothing.
Well, I wouldn't say nothing. A little man named Brock Bowers.
Well, Brock Bowers, yes. Okay, we've got Brock Bowers. But outside of Brock Bowers, nothing about this offense has been exciting. But they just got Geno Smith. And I think people are maybe discounting that signing just a little bit, or that trade, bringing him in just a little bit. Because to have Jakobi Meyers at wide receiver 40 just seems kind of crazy. In recency bias aside, he shouldn't be wide receiver 40.
No, he shouldn't be. There are a lot of factors that are actually making the Vegas Raiders look very attractive this season. Look, we know this offense is going to run through Brock Bowers. Brock Allen Bowers is the greatest thing to ever hit this planet since the Beatles. So, I'm trying not to oversell it right now, but I don't think I could do that. My love for Brock Bowers knows no bounds. But who is going to benefit outside of Brock Bowers with this quarterback change? It's going to be Jakobi Meyers. This offense literally has nothing in terms of pass catching options outside of Brock Bowers and Jakobi Meyers. We're looking at Trey Tucker, who ran the 6th most routes last season in volume and was essentially the all-exercise team MVP last season in the NFL. Ramil Keaton, tell me if you've heard of that name. You haven't. These are some of the other names on the depth chart. Tell me if you've heard of them. Alex Bachman, Tyreek McAllister, Christian Wilkerson, who had like a fantasy relevant 1 week in 2022 as a member of the Patriots in like week 16. Shedrick Jackson, Kyle Phillips, the former Tennessee Titans slot receiver.
The famous one and only Kyle Phillips. Yes,
the with 1 L, not 2. But yeah, that just illustrates like there is literally nothing behind Jakobi Meyers and Brock Bowers right now. And yeah, they probably bring somebody in the draft, but it's going to take time to get up to speed. I don't think that they immediately challenge. I mean, Brock Bowers, target, that's not going to be questioned by anybody. But I do think where that can be questioned is with Jakobi Meyers, but I don't think that it's going to be anything immediate. With 120 target upside right now in this offense. By the way, Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator, famously has run fast-paced offenses with the Philadelphia Eagles. So as far as like play volume, I think that's incredibly exciting for guys like Brock Bowers. If you're trying to just pull targets and you're trying to pull counting stats, obviously that's great for fantasy to run as many plays as you can with a team that was, I believe, top 10, close to top 10. They were 11th in pass rate over expected last year. I think that should probably kind of stay. I don't think they're going to get into the top 10, but that probably stays in the top half of the league. And then Geno Smith with his 70% accurate or completion percentage. He's basically Chris Paul on this team. He is a point guard. He is a distributor. Going from Desmond Ridder and Aiden McConnell and Gardner Minshew, that trio, going from them to Geno Smith is as big of an upgrade as we've seen from the quarterback position in a long time for any team. I think people are completely underselling what Geno Smith means as far as a monumental quarterback upgrade for the fantasy values of Brock Bowers and Jakobi Meyers. So, and we know this offense is going to be condensed between those two because who else are they going to be passing to? They don't have any target earning. Trey Tucker is not a target earning wide receiver. He's a spike week, long play kind of guy. Same with Keaton. Same, none of the running backs are going to be. They got rid of Amir Abdullah. So you don't have to even worry about that from like the running back perspective. Michael Mayer is on the trade block. So who else is there to really worry about besides a guy they draft? And that doesn't usually take place immediately if you're going to challenge a guy like Jakobi Meyers. So I think 130, 120 targets is 100% on the table for a guy like that in an offense that's going to be fast paced from a quarterback that's going to get them the ball.
Yeah, accurately. Which is something we haven't had in Las Vegas. We've had Aiden O'Connell. Gardner Minshew, has his moments where he's hyper accurate, but he's Gardner Minshew. And
exactly.
That's we know problem. We know they're not taking a wide receiver in the first round. Likely, if Jonty's still there at 7, they're going to take Jonty. They're not taking one in the second round. Can't see that happening.
They could, but they have.
I haven't seen it mocked. I haven't seen it mocked by anyone.
Right.
So, if
when have the Raiders ever done anything on schedule?
That's a fair point. Tyler Warren at 7, they're going to move him to the slot. But I mean, realistically, they're going to take a wide receiver 3rd rounder later. That guy's not going to challenge Meyers at any point.
Right.
Wide receiver 40 is ridiculous. The guy hasn't finished lower than wide receiver 30 in 4 seasons.
Right. And now
he's got an upgraded offense.
Right. And the later they take a wide receiver, like if you see them, obviously first round, you're not expecting it. But if they come out of the second round without a wide receiver, I think it's like wheels up for takeoff.
Oh, 1,000%. We're going to stay on this Vegas train here. We're going to go to Geno Smith since we already started talking about him a little bit. Right now, Kevin, he's QB 25 in the Fantasy Pros draft rankings. He's going as QB 26 on Underdog. I would like to point out the last 3 seasons finishes for Geno Smith, QB 5, QB 19, and QB 13. He is arguably in a better situation this season than he was last. Probably a better offensive line when all is said and done. A better defense for sure than what they had in Seattle last year, so less expectation on the offense. Wide receiver wise, probably not quite as good now, but you've got Brock Bowers. So that's an immediate upgrade over everything that you had in Seattle last season.
Yeah, like for the reasons we talked about, we love Brock Bowers, we love Jakobi Meyers. I don't know if that translates all the way to the quarterback position when you're talking about taking Geno Smith. He's got security. For dynasty that he's a perfectly fine QB2 or QB3 on a team. We know it's going to be fast paced because of Chip Kelly's history with the Philadelphia Eagles when he was the offensive coordinator there, head coach. But I'm just not super excited about Geno Smith. And I know Lou talked about Matthew Stafford as being like the broccoli of drafts, like eating your vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Geno Smith is definitely in the eat your vegetables tier.
He's the cauliflower.
He is the cauliflower. Like he has his fans, but he's not going to be winning any awards. And maybe that's fine. Maybe he's a stopgap quarterback on your redraft team. Somebody gets hurt. Like, I can think of worse, quarterback options than a guy like that. But, am I a little bit worried about his overall body of work when, he gets to throw to Jakobi Meyers and Brock Bowers, but every other team that they play know that too. But I think it's really going to come down to, play volume. And play volume is key because, obviously he had 578 pass attempts last year. Geno Smith did in Seattle under Ryan Grubb. Clearly it wasn't good enough. Ryan Grubb got canned the hell out, the Kalen DeBoer guy. But yeah, I'm excited about the passing game weapons. Don't know if I'm as excited about Geno Smith, but I understand the play just because he has security for a format like Dynasty. For a format like Best Ball, he's probably a average QB2. I would not draft him as QB1 by any stretch.
Oh,
he's
no.
probably a better QB3 than anything, but like I get the play, and he's probably like a break glass in case of emergency guy in redraft.
So in redraft, sure. In Superflex, though, I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that he's going to finish outside of that QB2 range.
I think just range of outcomes. Like, if we're looking at, obviously he had the season he had in Seattle in 2022 that
right,
put him back on the map, and then we saw 2023. He probably overshot that a little bit, but he probably split the difference last season where he was QB 13. So like, I think that's probably his ceiling.
Oh, it most definitely is. He's not a QB1. There's no way Geno Smith is a QB1. However, he could be a mid to high end QB2 if he has a really good season in this offense. Yeah. If he catches some of that magic being back with Pete Carroll specifically. That's kind of, look, he could finish QB 28. He could finish QB 30. He could get hurt and not finish the season. I don't know. But this is one of those, like, I'm willing to take a chance on him at this ADP. So if he's going QB 25, QB 26 in a draft and I need a third quarterback, I'm going to take Geno. Or if I'm at the back end, I want to load up on some other assets and I want him to be my QB2 for now, I'll take Geno. He's not a QB1 though.
No, he's not. But he's perfectly fine for what he is. He's just a back end quarterback that if you need him in a redraft, he's probably out there on the waiver wire. Obviously Best Ball, Dynasty, you're taking him as like a QB2, QB3 option, and there's value in that versus a lot of like unknowns. Like, I think a real like tipping point is like, do I take a chance on a Shooter Sanders, possibly playing, whether it's in New Orleans or whatnot, if he's going to play 8-9 games, do I take that chance or do I go Geno Smith, who I know, unless an injury strikes, is going to be playing all 17?
Yep. All right, we're going to move on here because I really want to talk about this guy before we get out of here. Mike Gesicki. I love tight ends. I've never been shy about the fact that it's one of my favorite positions. Mike Gesicki, the big slot receiver in Cincinnati. Right now he's going as tight end 25 on Fantasy Pros draft rankings, tight end 25 in Best Ball on Underdog. Kevin, let's talk about Mike Gesicki. Because he's not a tight end 1. We know that. Maybe he could be. The barrier to get into that tight end 1 range really is pretty low. But tight end 25 in a pass heavy offense in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't get it either. We've been waiting for the Mike Gesicki experience to finally, for that roulette wheel to finally land on a coach and an offense that knows what to do with him. 5 seasons in Miami, and it was clear by like his last season in Miami that they didn't know what to do or how to like properly utilize him, which is hilarious considering 2022 is like I believe that was the first year of Mike McDaniel in Miami. But then he went to New England to pair with Hunter Henry, and that didn't really work out great. He's a part-time player there, and now he ran exactly almost the same route share and snap share from his previous 2 seasons in Cincinnati last year, but saw 65, 665 and 2 with 82 targets. I think that was the highest he had been since his 2021 season where he had over 100 targets.
Yep.
Joe Burrow has talked relentlessly about wanting Mike Gesicki back and putting him in the same sentence with guys like T. Higgins, like Jamar Chase, like, Chase Brown. He's been talking about keeping that offensive nucleus intact. And, Cincinnati wants to keep Joe Burrow happy, that if they do anything in their lives for the Cincinnati Bengals, it's keep Joe Burrow happy. And that's the one thing, they've been notoriously a cheap franchise for as long as we've been alive, you and me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about they're just building up a practice facility after I think they've been borrowing or at least using the Cincinnati Bearcats practice facility, having to walk across busy streets just to get to it. But now no longer. They're actually putting money into the franchise, and now Mike Gesicki, got an extension, and now he rewarded the team his best season since that 100 target season, 1.58 yards per route run, almost a 20% targets per route run. We saw with T. Higgins injured, Mike Gesicki can be hyper targeted and produce. And that few week stretch that we had with Mike Gesicki, I'm pulling up right now. Was it week 8, week 9, 7 for 73 on 8 targets, 5 for 102 touchdowns in those weeks. That was when T. Higgins was hurt. We know that the Bengals tend to use a lot of tight ends. We know Eric All is probably going to be coming back mid to late season next year, but they still have, a bunch of Cam Grandy that they like to use. They're almost like the Colts in terms of using a bunch of tight ends, which it kind of stinks for fantasy. They still have True Sample. They still have Tanner Hudson. But I do think Mike Gesicki is still leaps and bounds over those guys in terms of, his skill set, and he should be rewarded. Obviously got the extension, but also, being on the field a lot more with those guys, with the Higgins, with the Chase. So I do think that his price is way too low for what we've seen out of him in this offense, and offense that has been top 3 pass rate over expected each of the last 3 seasons, has a great quarterback, has, guys that are going to take attention from defenses where Mike Gesicki is left relatively unchecked.
2 games last season, 22 targets in 2 games. He had a total of 18 catches in those games, 154 yards receiving over those 2 games. You get 5 games like that next season out of Gesicki, he's a tight end 1.
Yeah. I mean, the tight end position, when we're looking at guys that have the ability to spike, for multiple weeks, that's a pretty small list. But Mike Gesicki is 100% on that list. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he has all the things that you want from if you're going to be targeting a tight end. The only thing is, I know, Lou, I said they're almost like the Colts. Almost like the Colts in terms of they use 4 tight ends every single game and rotate them around. But I do think Gesicki can certainly be the top tight end there in terms of, I mean, he was running what we want from the tight end is running at base 70% of routes, and he wasn't quite doing that, but still was productive. So if he can get up to that kind of, they've been looking for a third target forever since, letting Tyler Boyd go. So he feels like what we've been drafting Dallas Goedert for, where it's a condensed offense.
That's a good one. Yes.
It's a condensed offense that we know is going to be efficient, but we have to kind of temper some expectations because of the 2 guys ahead of him, but he's still going to have his weeks. It's like Dallas Goedert that you get to draft at, what was it, tight end 20 something?
Yeah.
Come on.
You take that discount.
We've been drafting Goddard as tight end 7 for the last half decade.
Yeah. Oh, never got into Dallas Goedert. It's just I never bought into that whole craze.
I like Dallas Goedert though, just because I mean he's Kittle White. He's a good blocker. He's a good all around tight end.
That's yeah.
I don't think he gets the due that he doesn't get open like Kittle. Like Kittle has like if you look at 4 of the 5 if you look at the top 5 seasons in terms of ESPN open score since 2017, Kittle has 4 of the top 5 tight end seasons ever in open score. Like, when you want to try to trash George Kittle, come for me because I'm going to drop that nugget on you.
Oh, I would never trash George Kittle, but that's also a symptom of the offense as well. And I think Goedert's inability to get open is a symptom of the Philly offense. They just don't spread the field as much as San Francisco does. Right. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this one. This came from Keith, our Friday co-host. Christian Kirk has now found himself in Houston. He's going as wide receiver 50. Fantasy Pros draft rankings, wide receiver 51 on Underdog. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this, Kevin. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on Christian Kirk heading into this season?
Oh, if you got an hour, we can. I'm just kidding. I'm fine with Christian Kirk at his ADP. Like I've written about him. I think he's perfectly, fine. When you looking at wide receivers that have been efficient when they've been healthy. Christian Kirk hasn't been super healthy. He missed 5 games in 2023. He missed another 7. He missed 11 last season due to injury. But like when he's been on the field, he's been perfectly fine, perfectly efficient. You're looking at like a 1.7 yards per route run wide receiver. We were hoping for some of the upside when he was in Arizona. We finally got some of that in Jacksonville, and now with Houston, we know Tank Dell is likely, if he's not out for 2025, he's going to be coming back very late. Nico Collins is entrenched there. Dalton Schultz is like drinking a warm glass of milk, does nothing for you. Like he can step in and easily be the second target without blinking. None of those other wide receiver options in Houston really stepped up when you're looking at the John Mechie's, the Xavier Hutchinsons. They brought in Braxton Berrios and they brought in Justin Watson. Like I know you're trying to like remake the wide receiver room because the depth was so terrible last year. Obviously they had Stephon Diggs too, and he got hurt. But yeah, Kirk feels very safe as far as like a guy that can just come in and play the slot. Or play out wide, whatever. Like it feels very much like Justin Watson is going to be like the week 1 outside wide receiver in 11 personnel on the other side of Nico Collins with Kirk in the slot. Like that feels totally fine. And for a guy like CJ Stroud, who, famously, when you want to support a young quarterback, you try to get a left tackle, not trade your franchise left tackle away. But it's okay. Out goes Laramie Tunsil, in comes Cam Robinson. What's the worst that could happen there?
Who knows?
But Stroud's going to have to get the ball out quickly, and I think Kirk is going to be at least a target-dependent variation of that. I'm perfectly fine with that. At wide receiver 50, like that's a pretty good price.
I think it's a really good price for a guy who could be wide receiver like 36 range. I could see him somewhere around there, like a wide receiver 3. Jamie in the chat wants to know, is Cade Stover ever going to be a thing now that he's with the Texans? He's listed behind Dalton Schultz, but ahead of Brevin Jordan on the depth chart.
Cade Jover? No. I mean, Dalton Schultz, they have money in him, so he's probably going to be the guy, but like Cade Stover feels very Noah Grayish, very Jordan Akins-ish, where he's going to be like a guy you remember if he gets hurt, not somebody that's going to be providing like any sort of meaningful standalone value. I don't think there's that capabilities in this offense right now, but he's like one of the few guys you should probably remember if something does happen to Dalton Schultz, because I think he could probably be the Grant Calcaterra, the guy we're all going to the waiver wire for to pick up and hoping that he can be like a tight end 8 for a 3-week stretch. Like that
could be Cade Stover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, at this point too, Stover played with Stroud in college, so that probably, I always want that connection to mean more than it ends up meaning. It's like Troy Franklin in Denver. I'm hoping that kind of materializes with Bo Nix this year because they played together in college, but it doesn't always turn into anything great. I mean, look at Carr and Adams in Vegas.
Right. Like the Adam Levitan, the famous shower narrative, like that's the guys who played together in college. Like that does not always, turn out well for, look, we're going to get it this year. Nobody's talking about Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. So,
yeah, I mean, a little, we talked about it. I haven't heard anybody else really. Yeah, we talked about it a couple
I'm old. I don't remember.
I don't either, man. What day is it again?
Wait, it's Monday. We need the chat to drop timestamps and references. Also.
God, please. No, but I'll be doing that after the show for anybody who comes back and watches it so they know where to go. And with that, that's going to do it for us on this fine Monday. Couple of quick reminders before we get out of here. Make sure you check out our Discord channel. We are going to be live Discording the draft so you don't miss a pick. Head on over. The link is in the show description. Also, check us out on FastDraft. FastDraft.app. Code Optimus. You can sign up and get a $50 deposit match. Come draft with us. We're doing the Origins drafts. It's all rookies, and it's a blast. And it's a good way to get to know this class and kind of figure out what their values are going to be as the season approaches. That's promo code Optimus for up to $50 deposit match. All right. Also, head over to Sunday Dreamers Club. Our homie Casey's got some awesome fantasy football merch for you to check out. Yep. It really is. You can show all of your friends that you're a fantasy football nerd. One last comment in the chat. Who has all the best fantasy content on the internet? Optimus. It's true, we do. So make sure you like. Many are saying you should like this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're on a march to 500. We want to get there so we can start bringing you some premium content, guys. It's going to be a blast once we get to that 500. Make sure you sub. Tell your friends about us. We're pretty great, right, Kevin?
Many are saying as well.
Many are saying. We have a barber who loves our beards, so come for the beards, stay for the fantasy advice.
Yes, if you like the grays,
keep it here. It's because we're wise beyond years, folks.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I'm Nate Polvogt for Kevin Tompkins. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with us. We'll see you next week.